December 1976. Las Vegas. The king of rock and roll was burning up with a 104 degrees Fahrenheit fever. His body racked with pain, his voice barely a whisper during sound check. Doctors begged him to cancel. His manager demanded he perform. What happened next would become the stuff of legend, a performance so raw, so emotionally charged, that it would be remembered as the moment Elvis Presley transcended from entertainer to mythical figure. This is the untold story of how near-death illness became the catalyst for the most powerful performance of his career. The morning of December 12, 1976, Elvis Aaron Presley woke up in his penthouse suite at the Las Vegas Hilton, feeling like death itself had taken residence in his body. His temperature had spiked to 104 degrees Fahrenheit during the night, and every muscle in his famous frame ached with an intensity that made even breathing feel like a monumental effort. The flu had been circulating through his entourage for weeks, claiming roadies, backup singers, and even some of his closest confidants. But Elvis had seemed invincible until now. His personal physician, Dr. George Nicopolis, arrived within the hour, his medical bag heavy with concern and emergency medications. After a thorough examination, his verdict was unequivocal. Elvis, you cannot perform tonight. Your body is fighting a serious infection, and the stress of a 2-hour show could literally kill you. The fever had reached dangerous levels, and dehydration was setting in fast. In any normal circumstance, this would have meant immediate hospitalization. But this wasn't a normal circumstance. This was Vegas, and Elvis Presley had never missed a show due to illness in his entire Las Vegas residency career. The Hilton's main showroom was sold out. 2,000 fans had traveled from around the world, some mortgaging their homes for front-row seats. The financial implications were staggering. Canceling would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and potentially damage relationships with the hotel that had become his second home. Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's enigmatic manager, paced the suite like a caged animal. His gravelly voice cut through the tension. The show must go on. We've got contracts, commitments. These people came to see Elvis Presley, and by God, they're going to see Elvis Presley. The Colonel had built his entire career on Elvis's reliability. His ability to deliver no matter what personal demons or physical ailments plagued him got as the hours ticked toward showtime. Elvis found himself caught between two impossible choices: disappoint thousands of fans who had invested their hearts and money in seeing him perform, or risk his life for the sake of entertainment. The fever continued to rage, but something deeper was stirring within him. A recognition that this might be his moment to prove that the king of rock and roll was more than just a performer. He was a force of nature that could transcend physical limitations through sheer willpower and artistic passion. By 6 p.m., Elvis's condition had worsened. His fever spiked to 105 degrees Fahrenheit, and hallucinations began creeping into his consciousness. Dr. Nicopolis administered 4 fluids and fever reducers, but the medications barely made a dent in his symptoms. The doctor's face grew increasingly grave as he monitored Elvis's vital signs: rapid heartbeat, dangerously low blood pressure, and signs of severe dehydration that could lead to organ failure. "Elvis, I'm begging you," Dr. Nick pleaded, his usual composed demeanor cracking with genuine fear. "Your heart rate is through the roof. If you get up on that stage and exert yourself, you could go into cardiac arrest. The human body has limits, even yours." He had seen Elvis perform through pain before: broken ribs, strained vocal cords, emotional devastation, but nothing compared to this level of physical distress. The room fell silent except for the sound of Elvis's labored breathing. His inner circle, the Memphis Mafia as they were known, stood around his bed like worried family members. Red West, his longtime bodyguard and friend, spoke up. "Boss, maybe we should listen to the doc this time. There'll be other shows." But even as he said it, Red knew that Elvis Presley didn't operate by normal rules of self-preservation. Elvis struggled to sit up, his voice barely above a whisper, but carrying the unmistakable authority that had commanded stages for 2 decades. "Get me to that mirror," he rasped, pointing toward the full-length mirror that dominated one wall of the suite. With help from his bodyguards, he stood on unsteady legs, swaying slightly as he confronted his reflection. What he saw was alarming sunken eyes, pallid skin, and the unmistakable appearance of a man battling serious illness. But then something remarkable happened. As Elvis stared at himself, the performer began to emerge from the sick man's body. His posture straightened slightly, his jaw set with determination, and his eyes began to burn with the same fire that had captivated audiences since his breakthrough in the 1950s. "I've never let them down before," he whispered to his reflection. "I won't start now." The decision was made, against all medical advice and rational thinking. Elvis Presley would take the stage, fever and all, in what would become either his greatest triumph or his final performance. At 8:30 p.m., the Las Vegas Hilton showroom buzzed with anticipation. 2,000 fans filled every seat, their energy electric as they awaited the arrival of the king. Behind the curtain, Elvis sat slumped in a chair, wrapped in towels soaked, with cold water, his body shivering despite the raging fever. Makeup artists worked frantically to give him some semblance of his usual commanding presence, but nothing could hide the fact that he was gravely ill. The opening acts had finished, and the familiar strains of "Thus Spoke Zarathustra," Elvis's dramatic entrance music, began to fill the showroom. This was the moment of truth. Elvis's band members exchanged worried glances. They had seen him push through difficult nights before, but never anything like this. His backup singers, the sweet inspirations, whispered prayers as they watched. Their leader struggled to stand. With superhuman effort, Elvis rose from his chair and walked toward the stage entrance. Each step was a monumental achievement, his legs threatening to buckle with every movement. Dr. Nicopolis stood nearby with oxygen tanks and emergency medications, prepared for the worst-case scenario. The colonel watched from the wings, his usual cigar replaced by nervous chain-smoking as he witnessed the gamble of a lifetime dot as the curtain rose. Elvis appeared before his audience, and for a moment the collective gasp from the crowd was audible. Even through their excitement, many fans could see that something was wrong. Their idol looked different, thinner, paler, more vulnerable than they had ever seen him. But as Elvis gripped the microphone stand and looked out at the sea of faces, something magical began to happen. The fever that had been torturing his body suddenly became fuel for his performance. The vulnerability that illness had created allowed for a raw, emotional connection with his audience that transcended his usual showmanship. When he opened his mouth to sing his first song, his voice, though weaker than usual, carried a haunting quality that sent chills through the showroom. This wasn't going to be just another Vegas show. This was going to be something extraordinary, born from the intersection of physical crisis and artistic genius. What happened during the next 2 hours defied medical explanation and redefined what was possible in live performance. Elvis, running on nothing but adrenaline, fever-induced delirium, and pure artistic instinct, delivered a show that seemed to channel something beyond human capability. His usual repertoire of hits took on new dimensions, each song infused with a desperation and authenticity that his healthier performances, while technically superior, had sometimes lacked. The audience sensed they were witnessing something unprecedented. Elvis's movements were different, less of the trademark hip gyrations and athletic prowess, but more intimate gestures that drew people into his personal struggle. When he sang ballads, tears streamed down his face, whether from emotion or fever-induced. Delirium, no one could tell, but the effect was mesmerizing. Grown men in the audience found themselves weeping openly, and women screamed not with teenage excitement, but with genuine concern and love for the man suffering before them. During Love Me Tender, Elvis's voice cracked repeatedly, but each crack seemed to add layers of meaning to the lyrics. The song became less about romantic love and more about the love between performer and audience, a desperate plea for connection in his moment of greatest vulnerability. His band, initially terrified that he might collapse at any moment, began to realize they were part of something historic and adjusted their playing to support his weakened but emotionally powerful delivery. Midway through the show, Elvis did something unprecedented. He spoke directly to the audience about his condition. "Folks, I'll be honest with you," he said, his voice barely carrying to the back rows. "I'm sicker than a dog tonight. My doctor told me not to come out here. But looking at all of you, seeing your faces, there's nowhere else I'd rather be." The admission created an even deeper bond between performer and audience, transforming the traditional entertainer-spectator relationship into something more intimate and human. As the show progressed, Elvis's fever seemed to burn away everything non-essential, leaving only the pure essence of his artistry. His usual Vegas showmanship, the jumpsuits, the karate moves, the theatrical flourishes were stripped away by necessity, revealing the raw talent and emotional depth that had made him a legend. The audience wasn't just watching a concert. They were witnessing a man transcend his physical limitations through the sheer power of artistic expression and human will. The final 30 minutes of the show became the stuff of immediate legend. Word had spread through the hotel, and beyond that, something extraordinary was happening in the showroom. Hotel employees abandoned their posts to peek through doorways, and even celebrities staying in the hotel found their way to the back of the room. Everyone sensed they were witnessing a moment that would be talked about for decades to come. Elvis's version of "How Great Thou Art" that night has been called the most powerful rendition of any song he ever performed. Despite his weakened physical state, he somehow found the vocal strength to deliver the spiritual with an intensity that seemed to emanate from his soul. The gospel training of his youth, combined with his current physical and spiritual crisis, created a performance so moving that the normally boisterous Vegas crowd fell into complete, reverent silence. Even the cocktail waitresses stopped serving drinks, transfixed by the raw spiritual power emanating from the stage yacht as the show neared its end. It became clear that Elvis was running purely on fumes and willpower. His movements were minimal. His voice was failing, but his connection with the audience had never been stronger. For his final song, he chose "Can't Help Falling in Love," but this version was unlike any he had ever performed. It became a farewell of sorts, not just to that night's audience, but to a certain era of his career. The fever had burned away the entertainer and revealed the artist in his purest form. When Elvis finally left the stage, he collapsed immediately into the arms of his bodyguards. Dr. Nicopolis rushed to his side, checking vital signs and preparing for emergency transport to the hospital. But even in his physical defeat, Elvis had achieved something that would define his legacy. He had proven that true artistry could transcend physical limitations, that the connection between performer and audience could create something greater than the sum of its parts. The audience knew they had witnessed something unprecedented. Many remained in their seats long after Elvis had left, reluctant to break the spell of what they had experienced. Hotel staff would later report that people were crying, hugging strangers, and talking in hushed, reverent tones about what they had just witnessed. This wasn't just entertainment. It had been a spiritual experience that transformed everyone present. That December night in 1976 became the template for every great performance that followed in Elvis's career. He had discovered that his greatest strength as an artist lay not in his physical prowess or vocal perfection, but in his ability to share his humanity, including his struggles and vulnerability, with his audience. The fever that almost killed him instead revealed the essence of what made Elvis Presley the king of rock and roll. Ready to dive deeper into the untold stories of music's greatest legends? Subscribe now for exclusive content that reveals the human drama behind the performances that changed history forever. Don't miss the secrets that made the stars join our community of music lovers today.